Tired of bloating, fatigue and sluggish digestion? Meet your gut's new best friend, NutriHealth 365's microbiome supplement. Restore balance, boost immunity, and feel amazing from the inside out. Smart delayed release capsules, real results. Gut health just got personal.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Thursday's episode of Trending. Today, we're going to be talking about digital ID for a beer in the UK, driverless taxis in London by next year, and the Israel First digital ID pushing friends of Tony Blair, Ellisons, are buying up even more of what you can see and what you can hear. Welcome to today's episode of Trending, brought to you in association, as always, with NutriHealth 365. The link is in the description below. Okay, I'm going to kick off straight away with digital ID in the UK. Forgive me if I sound like a broken record, but it's sort of a big deal. Digital ID cards could be needed to buy a pint in the pub, as ministers are accused of taking Big Brother approach to civil liberties. You don't say. Young pubgoers may need to produce a digital ID card to buy a pint in the pub under government plans to expand the controversial scheme. Thought it was a conspiracy theory to say that's what they were going to do. Thought it was just about illegal immigration. It's weird, isn't it? Officials have suggested that digital ID could replace the assortment of physical documents, because that's annoying, having to get something out of your pocket. Ugh, so frustrating. Currently used by people to prove their age or status when buying things like alcohol. Status. The idea is the latest application suggested for the scheme, which was originally justified on the grounds of clamping down on illegal working. I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't justified. It wasn't. They said it. Absolutely nothing was justified because it's nonsense. Critics warned that the use of a centralised digital database for proof of age purposes could allow the government to collect intrusive information on individuals, including monitoring their movements and drinking habits. You don't say. I have to make the point, though, when you read stories like this, because this is everywhere, this, at the minute. I only chose this article by the Daily Mail because it's not behind a paywall. The rest of them are all behind a paywall, so I've picked this one, but it's across all of them, like the iPaper and all these other what you consider to be more left-leaning rags. It is, though, an example of how little they think of people. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're going to bring in digital ID for a pint because they're selling it as it's going to be for a way for you to prove ID, but that will expand into you need to show your ID to buy a pint. And that might sound strange, but if anyone's in the United States now, or if anyone travels to the United States regularly, they will know that it doesn't matter how old you are, you have to show ID, proof of age, to buy a beer, including my dad. I remember being sat in an airport with my dad, and we ordered a beer, and the lady said, have you got any ID? And I was like, I can't remember how old I was at the time, probably mid-20s or something. And I was like, oh, yeah, so there's my passport. Yeah, I am old enough. I know I've got a baby face. And then she asked my dad, and I thought she was joking. No offense, Dad, but I thought she was on the wind-up, and she wasn't. So that's what they'll do here as well. Only, in the United States, you don't have to show a digital ID, not currently. But when I saw this in all these papers, you need digital ID to buy a pint. It had have a burger and chips to get the jab vibes. In the sense that it showed how little they think of the people. That, these people don't want it. Yeah, they don't want the digital ID, and they don't believe that it's about illegal immigration. I wonder why they don't believe that. Because it's not about that. Tell them they can't have a beer. You know what I mean? Tell them they can't have a beer. Tell them they can't go to the pub and have 10 pints and a scrap. Tell them that, and they'll sign right up. And sadly, some will. But this is how they're doing it, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to pick off groups. Bearing in mind, when he made his very forceful and symbolic announcement, he said, someone will screenshot that and say a minute, won't they? Announcement saying, it's about stopping illegal working and, don't talk to me about why we need it when we all agree. There's too many people working in this country illegally, coming into the country illegally, whatever. And then a load of us went, yeah, it's not really about illegal working, is it? It's blatantly not about that. And then we got called conspiracy theorists. And then what they did is they just went, let's prove them all right, but really quickly. So obviously they're talking about it for a beer. They're going for the kids through this children's welfare and schooling bill in terms of getting digital ID for kids in school. They're going for the holiday makers with the EU, because obviously all these people are working hand in hand. People see countries as separate entities. And to us, the citizens, I guess, do you know what I mean? They are. Not to these guys. Blatantly not to these guys. That's why the borders are open. They can care less. So they're going for the holiday makers with that through the digital ID to travel, and the biometric stuff that you've got to hand over, the fingerprints and the facial recognition to go across the EU. Odeon, probably the biggest cinema chain in Britain, I imagine. I'm trying to think of another one as big as them. I'm sure there is one. They're one of the biggest, if not the biggest. They're saying they're going to introduce digital ID in terms of buying cinema tickets. Directors of companies are being told already that they need to provide their ID, digital ID, to be able to continue to be a director of their company. That's got everyone running around in a flap because they're attempting to pick off groups. And this is how they do it. They do it through the media with messaging. Obviously, a lot of what they do is kind of, they leak, we spoke about this before, they leak stories so they can gauge public opinion, and that will make them decide whether to go for the story and make it true, and they have done it, or then show the story to be leaked misinformation and we weren't really doing it, not really. Put it on the back burner, we'll do it later. That's obviously part of it. Another part of it is putting messaging out to target specific groups. So you're targeting parents, you're targeting directors of companies, you're targeting young people that want to go out for a pint, that's and have a life essentially. You're targeting people that might want to go to the cinema, movie buffs, whatever. They'll expand it to you need it for football and all these other things, so that they can kind of pick individual groups out. So those individual groups, instead of fighting the umbrella of digital ID in the first place, get rid of all of it, they will focus solely on what affects them. So you're kind of dividing the resistance then into, I'm a company director, I need to stop it for this. Well, I love the cinema, I go 3 times a week. Right? So they've got people fighting different fights rather than going, hey guys, it's not about the cinema. It's not about your trip to Benidorm. It's not about 10 pints and a scrap outside fever. It's not about any of that. It's about all of us. And, having everyone united against the idea of digital ID as a whole, not as a specific thing to target that group. But it begs the question that I asked in a video that I did earlier in the week, and I mentioned it on Trending on Tuesdays, is how far are you willing to go? Now, that's only a conversation that you can have with yourself, because they are going to come for specific things. And they're already doing that, despite telling us that it was a conspiracy theory to suggest that they would expand it. And they're going to expand it more. Of course they are. We know what they want ultimately is to have complete control over everything. They want that Chinese-style social credit system and more. Now, for them to come at us and say we're conspiracy theorists for saying that this was going to happen, and then proving us right immediately, bear in mind it's not even coming yet, and they're already expanding it, saying you'll need it for a pint and all this other stuff. So ask yourself, have that conversation with yourself, and only you can answer it, ladies and gentlemen. It's no one else's place to answer it for you. Is what are you willing to give up to resist? Because whatever means a lot to you in terms of, pastimes and fun and enjoyment and work or whatever, if that's the line for you to resist, so that if they cross that line, you won't resist, I'll go this far, then they will take you beyond that, because they are so desperate to get this in that's what they'll do. They'll identify what it is. They did it with the COVID jab mandates and mask mandates and all these other things. And in different countries, obviously, they were a lot more draconian in some, because they identify what affects the people, what they care about, what they would be willing to give up to accept it, and then work from that point. So, like I say, only you can answer that question. But people overwhelmingly, and this is encouraging, have stood up. And yes, people became very united very quickly. Then you had the terrorist attack in Manchester. that kind of split again, where people started arguing, and it's the Muslims and all that sort of stuff started again, and those fault lines that had been put down to combat, digital ID in the immediate aftermath of Chairman Starmer's announcement, it waned a bit, but it seems to be, I'll be honest with you, maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic, but it seems to be kind of congealing again. It's my first coffee of the day, actually. I've normally had, this is normally my second or third, which is obviously not a good thing. But they're panicked to a certain degree, the government. And I've said this for a while, that they're not acting out of strength. They're acting out of spite, because they're toddlers at the checkout that have been refused the sweets. Now, you can look at it in that way as a toddler kicking and screaming and think, what a div. But then obviously, as part of that as well, another thing that reacts in that way is a cornered animal. And that can be dangerous in the immediate, I don't really want to get my face slashed. So whilst it's encouraging that the government and the people they represent are desperate and are floundering, we still need to be aware and be streetwise about ways that they could lash out that could affect us. Now, this there was a meeting with Tech Minister Liz Kendall. Honestly, this Labour government is so unremarkable, it's hard to put it into words. I can't stand all politicians. I don't discriminate. I despise all of them equally. However, this particular Labour government is a gaggle of morons. And the fact that Liz Kendall, another 10-watt light bulb to add to your Lammies and Miliband's, is Tech Minister, just goes to show she's not in charge. Honestly, I wouldn't trust her to make that coffee for me. And it's literally instant. Because she's not the one making the decisions. She's the face of it, and then she'll have her tech moguls behind her that are actually saying, this is your policy, love. But she's called a meeting in the last few days with those companies that are basically part of the private sector that are, essentially going to be making the digital ID infrastructure. I think it's already made, if I'm honest, but the people that are going to operate it. So this is from an article within a computer magazine. So this is how much they're hiding it. That you can find the stories, but in I don't know who reads computer magazines. No, I don't, but I found this. With nearly 3 million people so far signing an online petition against the introduction of digital ID cards, the government is already fighting to reclaim the narrative after Prime Minister Keir Starmer's botched announcement of plans for a mandatory national ID scheme. Civil service officials last week attempted to quell a second uproar, not from the people, they don't care about the people, from the private sector digital ID app providers in a behind closed doors meeting. They're always behind closed doors meetings. Same with Bill Gates and all these others. When they meet these guys, you don't know what they're talking about. And that's because it ain't good. They're saying about ID cards. That sounds like, a card. So what would be the point in an ID card to replace ID? I've got ID, I've got a driving license. Because it's not about that. It's not going to be a card, ultimately. It will start off on your phone, and then it will be your facial recognition, fingerprints, whatever else. That's how they'll do it. Then they know when you're coming in and out. You can't hide it. They're annoyed, these app providers. They're annoyed that people have said no, essentially, because they want to introduce. They're going to make a bucket load of money out of it, and they're not happy. So the government is now, trying to basically appease them. They don't care about us. They're trying to appease them. So what I would say from that wording of, the botched announcement is that the messaging is going to change, and it is already changing. Because the botched announcement was botched because it was nonsense. I mean, most of us don't want digital ID anyway, period, full stop. But there are those that would probably accept it if they thought the reasons behind it were legitimate. The reasons for it stopping illegal immigration is nonsense, and people know that. So that's what they mean by botched. They don't mean the fact that, we might have to basically turn around and scrap it. They mean, oh no, we need to persuade people. So we need to change the messaging. So expect that to change and expect it to expand and expect it to become more emotive because that's how they get you. I was driving into work this morning and I heard an announcement on the radio from the NHS pushing the flu jab for kids. Honestly, they're demons, these people. But the messaging in it was this dad saying, go on, get it. And the kid goes, oh, really? Because the kid don't want it. The kid's not an idiot like the dad. And then the dad says, oh, I've already signed the consent form and stuff. You need to go and get it because it will protect you and your baby brother. Oh, no. Oh, well, I don't want to kill my baby brother, so I better go and get that shite stuffed up my nose then. It's the emotive messaging. That's how they do it. I shouted at the radio. I've become a dad. So expect the messaging to go more fear-based. And when I say fear-based, I don't necessarily mean in terms of something like terrorism, although they'll do that too, and they'll almost certainly throw terror attacks in there, unfortunately, and blame it on people that have come over on dinghies and see, this is why we need the digital ID. This is why we need to know what people are buying online because that guy managed to buy a bunch of ingredients to make a fertilizer bomb or whatever. We could have stopped that if only you had to use digital ID to purchase goods. You know the drill, ladies and gentlemen. But the other part of the emotive messaging is what I've already mentioned. You'll need digital ID for a pint. A lot of people live for the weekend. A lot of people live for the weekend. Mate, I think for most of my adult life, I've lived for the weekend. For that Friday night beer with my sister when I finished work on a Friday, when I was in my early 20s. Going to the pub, going to the Crown, 99p a pint, watching the world go by. Oh, mate. We've all been there. Wednesday's hump day. It's not called hump day for no reason. It's because you've gone up, and now we're on our way to the weekend. Get in. And so you take that away. You're gonna need digital ID to do that. I love films. I'm a film buff. Love them. Cinema. That's my thing. We can need it for that then. You're going to need it to holiday. Well, without my holiday, mate, honestly, I hate my job. My family life is hard, or whatever. Home life's tough. 2 weeks in the sun, man. I live for 2 weeks in the sun. I know people that live for 2 weeks in the sun, and I know people that went and rolled their sleeves up because they could not give up, in their mind, they could not give up 2 weeks in the sun. Football. My granddad used to take me to football when I was a kid, and then my dad took me, and I take my kids. Without that, I got nothing. I work a job I hate, and I live for the weekend for Derby County Football Club or whatever football team you support. Now, some people watching this might think that's embarrassing. I ain't here to judge. I know people that are like that. They love the football. They love it. It's their escapism. People say, oh, it's bread and circuses. Yeah, but I like bread and I like circuses, and so do a lot of people. And as long as you know that's what it is, that's fine. But a lot of people live for it because it's their escapism from the rat race. It's their escapism from... Let's have it right. I know it's early and it's not really a swear word, but the shite of life. A lot of people have a really shite life. They do. And the world has been set up in that way that it's freaking hard and it's horrible. And days are tough and people wake up in the morning and go, oh, look at their alarm clock as it goes off, going, not another day. But on Saturday, we're away at Charlton Athletic. I'm going to meet the lads. I'm going to have a couple of beers on the train. And I'm going to watch my boys play football, and that's everything to me. So by saying that you're going to have to sell your soul to be able to do that, that in itself is emotive messaging. It might not be as emotive as people being blown up on a tube, but it's still emotive to that person, and that's why they're doing it. It's about threatening people with what essentially they live for. Think about the COVID lockdowns. People they had taken, you still go to McDonald's and feel your arteries full of shite, but you weren't allowed to go to football. You weren't allowed to go to the gym, which is a big deal for a lot of people in terms of mental health. Weren't allowed to do that. And physical health, ironically. You couldn't go to gigs. And even when they started allowing you to these things, it was all distanced and socially distanced is an oxymoron in itself. But you had all that kind of stuff. So they ruined it. And people stopped going in the end, some people, even when they were allowed back. It's not the same anymore. They've ruined it for me. And so this is another part of doing that. And you know, this is why we need to stand up to it. And this is why Saturday there's a big protest, hopefully an enormous protest in London. Now, people will go, well, what do protests do? They don't change policy and all this kind of stuff. And there's arguments on both sides. But to have an enormous amount of people standing in unity of all different demographics of people and showing that unity to the state, even if it is just a statement of you're throwing all this stuff at us, you're trying to divide us through various means, and we're not having it. Yes, I think this blue-haired guy is a bit of a knobhead most of the time, but on digital ID, we're together and we're opposing you. And that in itself is a massive statement to make to these people. And I think it's an important one to make. And I'll be there, and I know, you know, a lot of my friends will be there, and hopefully you will be too. Starts at Marble Arch in London at 1 p.m. And let's make a statement, guys. Do you know what I mean? Let's as Fiona says, she's the organizer, Fiona Rose Diamond, when she makes the point that we need to show these people that the price of tyranny is not nothing. That we're not just going to roll over and go, yeah, okay, well, you've said I can't go to Wetherspoon, so I'm on board. You've said I can't go to Benidorm, so I'm on board. You've said I can't go and watch Derby get beat 4-0 probably, so I'm on board. No, mate. And just finally, actually, on digital ID and how it ties into protest. Where's Tommy Robinson on digital ID? You've just had this rally that you say was 3 million people in London. It wasn't, but even if it was, to unite the kingdom. And here we are fighting back the fight of our lives against digital ID, because we've made the point so many times that if this comes in, everything else is built on top of it. Without digital ID, none of these other schemes, none of these other dystopian impositions, they don't fricking work. They need that base. So if we can get rid of that, everything else is all over the shop. Everything else is a shambles. Well, I'm up for fighting against a shambles because it's a hell of a lot easier than fighting against something that's very, very organised, which it will be if that's in place. So where are these Unite the Kingdom types? Where are these patriots that stand up and fight for the common man in Britain? He's licking a wall in Israel. What is that about? Genuine question. What is that about? Making propaganda videos for Rebel News, for a foreign country. Why? Why don't you go in 2 weeks' time? If you're that obsessed with the place, which you clearly are, why don't you go in 2 weeks' time? Why don't you bring the people that are united for the kingdom, the people that follow you, why don't you bring them together and fight against digital ID? Because that's a lot of people. A lot of people follow this dude. So why not? Why go off? When you get that invite from the Israeli government to go and make propaganda videos and lick the wall or whatever, go, yeah, okay, I'll come and lick the wall. Mate, I'll do more than lick it. Just give me a couple of weeks. Because there's sort of a big deal going on in my country at the moment. But they don't. They're off there. And you just look at the tweets. They're all cut and pastes. The dude don't speak and write like that. They're press releases from the Israeli government that are cut and paste and sent to you, the patriots that follow this guy. It's just a propaganda tool to get you on board with Israel. And think about it this way, right? Just finally, because I don't want to necessarily dig individuals out, but think about it this way. This is a genuine question, right? Before you come at me. It's a genuine question, and ask yourself this. You've got someone that's up on terrorism charges now. Now, probably cooked up nonsense. I'm not arguing that. Like refusing to give the government and the police access to your mobile phone. Do you know what I mean? I'm not on the state side on this. But bearing in mind someone like my father, a man in his 70s, is banned from the entirety of Europe, from Australia, for wanting to speak at an anti-war rally in Amsterdam. He's been banned for 2 years. That's been expanded to another 2 years, and it's now indefinite, right? So he's banned from Europe. And then you've got a guy that goes into court on supposedly terrorism charges, having been in and out of prison a bunch of times, Now, whether you agree with that or not is sort of irrelevant in terms of whether he should have gone to prison or not. That's totally another conversation. But in terms of in the eyes of the state and in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of the judge, and this judge, who's the weird nutcase that said about Paddington Bear, do you remember that story? Same judge, where two guys, I think, defaced a Paddington Bear statue, and the guy sentenced them saying that their actions went against everything Paddington Bear stood for. It's a fictional character, mate. This same judge is supposed to, be doing this trial with Tommy Robinson, says, I tell you what, don't worry about it. We'll delay the trial. We'll delay the trial so you can go to Israel. Tell me another time where someone on a terrorism charge, cooked up or not, on a terrorism charge, gets told, don't worry about it, off you go and travel over to a foreign country, not a problem, and I'll see you when you get back, yeah? Yeah, can you bring me some hummus back? Yeah, nice one. It doesn't happen, mate. Doesn't happen. So why has it happened? I'll leave you with that question. And it's a genuine question. Why? We know that the courts are as corrupt as they get. We know that the justice system is anything but. This guy's written a book called The Enemy of the State, yet the state's just gone, yeah, don't worry about it. Bugger off over there. You have a good time. Have a good time. I'll see you when you get back. In the middle of a trial. Wouldn't happen to you, and it wouldn't happen to me. So why then? And I'll let you come up with why you think that is. Okay, so that's the end of the sort of social media section of trending. It's cold now. Head over to iconic.com. The exact link, URL, is in the description below. And you can watch the rest of the episode for free. We're going to be talking about driverless cars coming to London as soon as next year. And in fact, they're already there at the moment. So that's a bit of a whatever. And also about David Ellison, who's the son of Larry Ellison. Big Israel firsters and massive friends of Tony Blair and pro digital ID, basically buying up the entirety of the media in the United States and around the world.